Good evening. I am Cecile Schoon, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Florida. I will serve as your moderator for this forum. My timekeeper and assistant tonight is Angela de Monbrun from the League of Women Voters of Jacksonville, First Coast. I also want to thank my co-president, Debbie Chandler, for all of her work and participation in organizing the forum. I want to thank Florida's communications manager, Blake Summerlin, who is organizing the Zoom, Charlene Griffin, co-president of the Villages League, and Ann Smith and Nikki Junkins of the Volusia League for helping to organize tonight's event. A special thank you to Gail Formanak of the Villages League, who just moderated the Republican Forum for Congressional District 6. Tonight, at this moment, we are working on the Democrat Forum for Congressional District 6. I'll tell you a little bit about the League before we start. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, nonpartisan organization. While we never endorse a candidate or a party, we are directly involved in shaping the important policy issues that keep our community and state strong. As League members, we have opportunities to educate ourselves and others on local, state, and national issues. The League wants everyone to vote, so we actively encourage participation at the polls through voter registration and education efforts such as this forum and our online voters guide at vote411.org. In addition, many of our state and many local leagues have a speakers bureau which offers education and PowerPoint presentations to interested organizations on a wide range of topics. I encourage you to visit our website at lwvfl.org to learn more about our work. The League is happy to present this forum so voters in Congressional District 6 can learn more about their candidates. The meeting is being recorded and will be available on the League's website tomorrow. It is also being live streamed on the League of Women Voters of Florida's Facebook page. We greatly appreciate the candidates' willingness to participate in this forum. All three candidates on all of the candidates on the Democratic ballot were invited to participate. And we have Mr. Josh Weil and Mr. Selmont who have agreed to participate this evening. Let's get started. Oh, want to remind you that the election date is Tuesday, 28th, and early voting starts very soon. For more specifics, look at your Supervisor of Elections website to get all the information that you need. There's still time to request a vote by mail ballot if you request it by the January the 16th. So a short amount of time, but you can still do it. Again, check the Supervisor of Elections. I wanted to share with you, we did a little bit of work just before the forum formally started. We essentially drew numbers from to see who would go first. And I didn't know, and none of the candidates knew. Turned out that Mr. Weil's name was selected to give his opening statement first. And then we'll hear from Mr. Selmont. And we will, then the first question will go to Mr. Selmont, and Mr. Will then respond. So we'll just alternate back and forth who gets the question first. So that's how we'll do that. Each candidate will be given time for an opening statement of up to 2 minutes explaining their qualifications and interest in holding office. This will be followed by questions with each candidate having the opportunity to respond for 2 minutes. Again, we talked about how the order would start. All right, so let's go to you then first, Mr. Weil, with your opening statement.
Thank you, Cecile. Hello, good evening. My name is Josh Weil. I am campaigning for the U.S. Congress in Florida's District 6 special election. I want to be your congressman in Florida's 6th district, representing you and fighting for a better future for our families, for the people of Central Florida. Again, my name is Josh Wheel. I'm a father of two amazing boys, David and Alexander. As a public school teacher, I have lived and worked in Central Florida for almost 40 years. I completed my postgraduate program in educational leadership at Stetson University in DeLand, right here in this district. I have earned a BS in biology and a BBA from I earned a BS in biology from Stony Brook University in New York and a bachelor's of business administration from Northwood University in Michigan. Many of you know that I campaigned previously for US Senate in 2022. As a parent and a public school teacher, I grew tired of feeling like I never had the option to support a candidate who believed in the things I believed in and truly wanted to make things better. So I decided to run for office, to be that candidate. In that campaign, though I didn't go on to win the office, I built relationships with Democratic organizations, clubs, caucuses, and voters all across the state. It was a tremendous experience. As a teacher, I believe that we must protect our public schools for our children and our country. As Thomas Jefferson stated, democracy depends on a well-educated electorate. Public schools teach citizenship and tolerance, providing students with job skills right out of high school. Public schools are currently facing the greatest threat since their inception in this country in Trump's Project 2025 agenda, which would dissolve the federal Department of Education and ultimately redivert and hand over all federal funds that would go to schools.
Thank you, Josh. Mr. Selmont.
Yes. My time is starting.
Yes, go ahead. 2 minutes.
Great. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Cecile. Appreciate you guys putting on this forum. It's very important. It's a great opportunity to talk to women voters and appreciate the League of Women Voters. I'm a little bit disappointed you spoke to the Republican candidates already because I would have loved to have heard you get them on the record to agree to debate either Josh or myself, whichever one of us wins the Democratic primary, because I know from my experience back in 2018, running for the U.S. House in District 4, that the Republicans would not debate the Democrats. So I really hope that the League of Women Voters will do everything they can to exert pressure on whoever the Republican nominee is to actually debate either me or Josh in this election. So really appreciate you guys and your efforts. My name is George Selmont. My friends call me Jess. Hopefully all of you will call me Jess in the future. I'm a resident of Elkton, which is in St. Johns County, which is one of the 6 counties that is in the 6th Congressional District. I'm a graduate of Yale University, Harvard University, Northeastern University School of Law, and Bard College. I've been married for 24 years. We raised our 2 boys who are now in college at the University of Alabama, Roll Tide. We raised them here on the first coast of Florida. And I know this district very well. I'm the one candidate of the 5 candidates, Republicans and Democrats, who actually is a resident of this district. And I've been fortunate to spend a lot of my weekends and nights as a parent on all the bleachers and football stadiums and football fields and baseball fields throughout this district and consumed quite a few number of calories in this district. The reason why I'm running—
30 seconds, Mr.
Thanks. The reason why I'm running is because we have great candidates like Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton who can't win. They have not been able to win. And the reason why they're not winning is because the public is not buying a progressive agenda. I am a moderate Democrat. I'm running in a moderate district. And I don't think that progressive values are the right things for the voters here if we're going to flip this seat. And this very unique opportunity for a special election to flip a seat, I think we need to run a local moderate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Selmont, this first question is for you. Explain your top 2 legislative priorities for this upcoming term.
Sure. There's 2 ways to answer that question. my top two priorities, which are the top two priorities for this district, all revolve around land use. I think that the problems for the 6th district and the opportunities for 6th district have to do with our land. We have an opportunity, we have a situation where seawater is rising up from beneath us and it's contaminating people's wells. And we have a situation where the waters are coming in from the coast and our coasts need to be hardened. People are losing their insurance. The National Flood Insurance Program has not been fully funded. And so people need solutions that Tallahassee has not been giving us, and we have to get those solutions in Washington. So that is what I think is most important for this region and what I want to work on. Specifically legislatively, what I think is going to come up in this term, because obviously as a freshman congressperson, you're not allowed to, you're just going to be jumping on the back of other people's legislation. I think that it's extremely important that student loan relief is something that both parties could work on. I think that is something that could be pushed through in this Congress. And I also think that continuing prescription drug care cost containment and healthcare cost containment is something that is a bridge issue for both parties. So I think that those are the two issues as a freshman legislator that I would be working on and supporting.
Thank you. This next question, we'll hand it to you, Mr. Whale. When, if ever, is it appropriate to compromise to pass legislation?
So, I think a lot of with compromise comes down to what your end goal is. It's not about winning or losing versus the other party. It's about securing the needs for the people you serve. So if we're talking about something like healthcare and trying to get to Medicare for all, right? Any sort of compromise that gets us steps of the way, if we can't make it the whole mile, but we have to start with the first 1,000 yards. If we could get Medicare for all veterans, if we could get Medicare for all children with cancer. Now, I think there are some things that we can get more people on board agreeing that healthcare just needs to be immediately accessible. Even if they're not willing to acknowledge that all human beings in this country deserve and have a right to healthcare, that they can recognize and maybe a more urgent need on some of them, and we can build the way. I've never been a fan of compromise when we see it reducing the efficacy of the solution. So when we have two competing solutions, both sides wanting to solve the problem, but in a different way, too often compromise can become, well, we'll do half of this way and half of that way. And, two programs each, funded with half of what they need and implemented, to half the level that would have been effective winds us with no solutions at all. So for me, compromise needs to be there to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the people. As long as we can continue or increase the level at which we serve the people we represent, then any compromise is successful.
Thank you. Mr. Selma, your response on that?
I think that whoever's elected from this district, because this is a 30% Democrat and 70% definitely ain't Democrat district, they're going to expect compromise from us, not capitulation to our values, our core moderate democratic values, but compromise. I think an example of that is the Trump tax plan. It's getting passed. I mean, Trump is gonna pass his tax plan, and there's not going to be anything we can do about that. However, Kamala Harris had a brilliant idea with no tax increases for families under $400,000 gross income. I think that's something that Democrats can work across the aisle to try and force into that. I think the other thing we can do in terms of compromising with the Republicans on Donald Trump's tax plans. We know his tax plan is going to cut taxes for the wealthy. We know it's going to cut taxes for the corporations, and we're not going to be empowered to do anything about that. However, the small business tax credit that's in there can be increased. And that's for people who have LLCs, people who are landscapers, people who have home-based businesses, people who have small businesses, cleaning services, et cetera. To be able to raise that small business tax credit would be a great compromise that the people of this district would love. So I think it's very important that we don't capitulate our values. And I know Josh is fervent in his democratic values. He's not going to capitulate either. But we're going to work to find compromise where we can and improve the unfortunate bills that Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to put forward.
Thank you. And I just realized that, Mr. Wheel, you were just so patient with me, but I want to give you a chance to answer the first question. Can you explain to us your top 2 legislative priorities for this upcoming term?
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Selman and I must be encountering different residents when we're doing our canvassing, because all the people that I've spoken to, when we ask them about their present needs, no one has mentioned, seawater and soil levels. People are concerned about the cost of groceries. They're concerned about the cost of gas. They're concerned about the cost of housing. They're concerned about their homeowners insurance. They're concerned about their schools. They're concerned about the things that affect their everyday life now. And, they're struggling to survive paycheck to paycheck. More than 60% of Americans have less than $400 in the bank account right now. And, as prices go up, salaries are not going up commensurately. And when prices go up sharply, there's not enough elasticity in the pocketbook to get by month by month. You see it every county in this district. You drive through and you will see plasma donation sites, more and more people trying to find ways, literally bleeding themselves dry to get by in the current American economy. They need relief. And I think one of the first things and the most important things that we can do is work on housing. And that means that we need to pass legislation that bans corporations from owning single-family residential homes. Corporations have been buying up more than half of the single-family residential properties across Florida and across this country for over a decade now. They have a stranglehold on the supply and demand, and they are solely responsible for the situation we're in, where a 2-bedroom apartment costs more than $1,800 in most cities in the state now. Housing is the #1 item in most families' budgets, and it is the place where they need the most relief. And that's before getting to how completely inaccessible the dream of home ownership has come for the current generation.
Thank you. Mr. Selmont, how would you balance tax cuts and reducing the national debt?
Tax cuts will not, unfortunately, tax cuts will be a drop in the bucket to reducing the national debt. The tax policy in this country needs to be made fair. We need to reduce taxes and simplify the tax code. But as a deficit reduction measure, unfortunately, tax cuts are not going to get us anywhere near there. We are going into under the Trump administration, we are going into an undefined, nebulous world. We don't know what Elon Musk and his dodging committee is going to come up with in terms of what their proposals are to cut expenses from our federal budget. Clearly, we need Republicans to stop overspending. And that is not cutting healthcare. That is not cutting social benefits to people. That is not where the budget is out of whack. So a sensible tax code, a shortened tax code, and really it's taxes on, it's fees and taxes on hedge funds, on corporations, and taking the onus of balancing the budget off of individual American taxpayers.
Thank you. Mr. Wheel, what, let's see. Well, this would actually go back to you, Mr. Selmont.
Sure.
Oh, ma'am, do
I'm
I
sorry?
get an opportunity to respond to the question on taxes?
Yes, you do. Go right ahead.
We tax the rich. I mean, that's the number one thing. Our tax code is completely upside down. Those in the working class and the lower levels of the income brackets already pay incredibly disproportionate taxes when you take into account all of the other fees and taxes placed. Sorry, I have cat. All of the other fees placed on them in the regular life. Florida's one of, if not, and 2 years ago, it was the most taxed state in the nation, the most tolled state in the nation. We have the highest toll fees enacted on drivers. Here in Central Florida, in the Orlando area of Central Florida, we have 6 highways. 5 of them are toll access only, and the 6th one, which is the delightful ride known as the I-4, was recently expanded, but expanded to put in a toll-only express lane. If you're paying $4 to $8 each way on your commute to work, that massively disproportionately affects people making hourly wages compared to those making 6-digit salaries. It is a completely disproportionate portion of their income that they're already bearing. Meanwhile, we have a tax code, where when Mitt Romney was running for president, and was asked about why he didn't pay any federal income tax the year before, he said, "That's how the tax code's written. I didn't break any laws. I followed the rules as they were laid out for me." If you want to talk about if we need a different tax code, that's a different issue, but that's how it works. If you're making millions of dollars, there are enough loopholes and runarounds where you don't have to pay your share. But if you're making $50,000 a year, you need to save all of your receipts and count your pennies to try to get, a $50 credit on something. We tax the people who need the services from us the most, and we ask the least from those who should be providing. It's a completely upside down system. And we've seen every single economic graph, takes off in the year 1980, where all of our economic equalities measures start completely diverting, which also happens to be the year that, corporate capital gains taxes dropped from 75% to 35% and have never risen back up since.
Thank you. Okay. Well, you answered that last question second, so we're going to put the next question to you first. What reductions to social services would you support as resources are reviewed by the new Department of Government Efficiency?
That's a fantastic question, and I love it because I am truly sick and tired of our government supporting these multi-billion-dollar corporations with all of the exemptions and loan forgiveness and all of these big corporations that got loans and were able to pay them back, even back in President Obama's, economic recovery period, the great bailout for all of the corporations who, made disastrous decisions, tanking our economy in the mid 2000s, only to just get a free pass to go on and continue practicing business the way as usual. We support billionaires' spaceship playgrounds, but we have trouble putting parks and playgrounds in for kids in our inner city. I believe that we need to be expanding the majority of our social services across this country. There are so many people with need. We have parents of young children with need and the skyrocketing costs of daycare. We have single mothers and families with need. We have healthcare needs. We have veterans with needs. We have, housing instability. We have food instability. And those are the areas that people are screaming and complaining about. That we need to that we need to cut them off. But until all Americans have their basic needs met, then no, we need to continue expanding those services across the board.
Thank you. Mr. Selmont?
I feel I have to protest because Josh's cat is too cute and it's really giving him an unfair advantage in this debate. There were supposed to be no surrogates allowed, and clearly his kitten is an unfair advantage for him. I sort of rolled that into my previous question, talking about Elon Musk's committee. So I'm going to take a little bit of a broader view here. Again, obviously, balancing the budget and saving money in this country on the backs of working people is not effective and it's not fair. We have an upside down economy right now where half of the country is driving Ubers to take the other half of the country to the airport for their vacations. Half the country is driving Ubers to bring food to people who are sitting home eating it. We have lost the balance in our economy. We had a tripartite economy where we had a manufacturing center in the middle. As I've gone through this district, campaigning my district, I've talked to people, and young people are incredibly eager to work, hardworking, but really are frustrated that they don't see that they're going to have important work in their life. And either they're not going to be allowed to take the jobs or go into the careers that they want because of our health insurance and because they have to make job choices based on health insurance, which is something we never had to do in this country before. My parents never made a decision as to what they did in their lives based upon the cost of insurance premiums. And that's the country that we live in nowadays. I'm sorry, was that a time?
30 seconds.
Oh, thank you. So, we need to achieve balance in our economy. It is, I think we all can agree, and President Obama, when he was elected, the first thing he did was to set out on government efficiency, and he was thwarted, quite frankly. Finding efficiencies in government is something that we're all looking forward to. I think we are all very rightfully skeptical about what Elon Musk is going to try and do with President Trump. And I think in Congress, we're going to have to be vigilant to defend all the entitlements, all the programs, all the social services that people get and rely upon.
Thank you. Mr. Selmont, then this next question goes to you first.
Sure.
How would you balance the demands of development, such as fracking, drilling, and other things, with the need to protect our natural resources?
Sure. That's one where, fortunately, in the state of Florida, there is no need to balance because we just don't need that. I think that it is ludicrous to be drilling for oil in the panhandle of this state. We are not do not need to be an oil producing state. We should not be drilling for oil in the panhandle. I think that that's ludicrous. As for fracking, there's no need to be fracking off our coast. Unfortunately, Josh has not been talking to people in the district, and if he read the local newspapers and resided in the district, he
Excuse
would
me.
know that. I'm sorry.
I'm going to remind the candidates that we don't need to talk about the other candidate. Just tell us your policies, because this is not a formal debate. This is a forum where we want to hear from you, if you don't mind.
Okay, but just as long as it's enforced equally and the time is
Yes,
enforced equally, I
absolutely,
appreciate it.
for both.
Absolutely.
It's,
So, yeah, so
please, just
water
talk
systems.
about your issues.
Sure. So water systems are a very important issue in this district, and fracking harms our water tables, and so there's no need for fracking. We need to rely upon clean energy, solar and wind, and become a leader in that instead of a follower in following fracking and drilling for oil in our panhandle. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wheel?
Yeah, I agree with Jess on this, that there's no balance here. There is no need for us to continue to be drilling or fracking. Energy dependency is a problem that only has about 142 different viable solutions that our federal government and the oil lobbyists and the coal lobbyists all seem to refuse to acknowledge. There are viable, clean energy sources that we could be using to become completely energy independent, and that we could be helping to support other countries to gain that type of independence as well. But instead, we choose to fight the world for dinosaur bones. We have 100 different options for energy independence. We have one planet. And I don't know about you, but I'm a little partial to breathing oxygen. So that one's going to take priority every time.
Thank you. Mr. Will, I'm going to ask you the next question first. In light of the fact that a majority of Floridians, albeit not the 60% needed for passage of a citizens' initiative, but they voted to relax the strict Florida abortion access laws in last November's election, do you support passage of a federal law codifying access to contraception and abortion? Why or why not?
Yes, I do. And it's because I am of the belief that women are also human beings, and are entitled to full bodily autonomy and all of the same rights as their male counterparts. Women's reproductive health is not an issue that men or governing bodies or anyone should get to have a say in. What each human being having sovereignty over their body should be an inalienable right. And choosing points based on the narrow patriarchal view of one religion in order to oppose constraints and relinquish rights from half the country is archaic, asinine, and tyrannical. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your clarity on that. Mr. Selmont, your views?
Yeah, I think that it was a very interesting November here because obviously it was a horrible November in Florida, in the country with Trump winning, but 57% of Floridians voting in favor of enshrining women's health rights in the Constitution, our state Constitution, even though it didn't hit the 60% threshold, is remarkable. And it's a testimony to all the women who get out there for the local Democratic groups and push turnout and encourage and call people and encourage people to vote. I think that's an amazingly promising thing. I do think that in a Congress that is this this close, that I think that pushing on this issue for a federal law on this is something that really could put the Republicans on their heels, because it really could make moderate Republicans have to stand up for women's rights and women's health rights and teenage girls' health rights as well. So I think that this is really an issue that Democrats in Congress should be vocal and be fighting for in this divided Congress, because there are a lot of midterm elections are usually go against the incumbent party. And I think there are going to be a lot of vulnerable Republicans out there, not necessarily in Florida, but across the country, and that this is a really good issue. Women's health rights is a really good issue for us to be running on from day one. So absolutely, I support it.
Thank you. Mr. Selman, I'll ask you the next question first. What stance would you advocate to resolve the Israeli-Gaza war?
Well, hopefully, if the New York Times is to be believed, they are about to sign a truce, although things change very quickly in that part of the world. So hopefully a truce is signed. Look, war is hell. War is awful. The civilian casualties are unacceptable, and it brings a tear to everybody's eye who watches the evening news. It is, you know, Israel is our greatest friend in the region. They are a democracy. It is democracies need our support, and we will support our great friend Israel. But we need to have this truce signed, and we need to have a solution where we rebuild that ancient and vital part of the world, and we give people economic hope. The countries of the world get together and rebuild Gaza and give the Palestinians hope and a functioning economy. And I think that if the economy there is as good as the economy in Israel, that peace will finally come to that region.
My turn. If we want to talk novel approaches, I'm a proponent of the three-state solution. I think that we already see in Old Jerusalem, parts of it, including Masjid al-Aqsa, are already under a tribunal oversight where members of the three Abrahamic religions together govern and oversee the fair use and the caretaking of that land. It could be extended over the entire contested region, with the northern area remaining Israeli and the southern portion becoming a sovereign Palestinian state. But in lieu of that, I'm, personally less concerned with, land borders, and more that, our foreign policy should be to help preserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for anyone, anywhere else in the world. The ideals that we hold true for ourselves on Americans, what we want for ourselves, we should want for our neighbors. And when we are out intervening in the world, when we are getting involved, it should be simply for that, to protect life and to ensure liberty. We can talk all we want about, if a country is a beacon of democracy or spreading democracy, but when we allow an apartheid state to hold a population in the largest open air prison in the world and slowly commit a genocide on them, we're not the good guys.
Thank you, Mr. Will. Our last question that I will present to you, Mr. Will, first is, do you support passage of a federal voting rights legislation to provide national standards for voter registration and access to the ballot? Why or why not?
Absolutely. I believe that voting should be one of our inalienable rights here in America. I strongly oppose the loss of voting rights for felons or those convicted of crimes. I think that if we had polling locations inside our prisons, they'd be the most secure voting sites in the country. And that, for a country that was founded on discomfort with taxation without representation, the fact that we have a significant portion of our country that has lost their voting rights, continues to pay taxes, and are used as political footballs. We've seen here in Florida over the last 25 years the continued expansion of for-profit prisons. And those for-profit prisons tend to get put in rural counties, and they tend to get filled with minorities from much larger counties. And, when you move those people and you fill the prisons, and, you move people from District 28 into District 3, they go into that population there. They go into how you are determining the representation. They go into your statistics for your populations, for your diversity, for how many representatives an area gets. even though those people have no rights to choose those representatives or be represented by the government that is and will continue to be infringing on the liberties for the rest of their lives. So I support universal voting rights in this country.
Thank you. Mr. Selmont?
Yeah, I do agree, and I do support federal support for voting rights. I think that the Supreme Court has done a number of made a number of questionable decisions recently, and the Supreme Court's decisions both on gerrymandering cases and on the Voting Rights Act cases are certainly head scratchers, and I think set dangerous precedents. The We need to have fair elections. We need to have just elections. Need to have elections that people can trust. We're seeing the politicizing. We're seeing the Republican strategy and ground game of trying to both attack and intimidate local election officials and to, by election and appointment, take control of local and state election offices. So I think the time is come to strengthen federally. Congress has to get involved. Congress has to pass laws. One, laws that govern gerrymandering, and two, strengthening, not reducing the Voting Rights Act. So absolutely.
Thank you both.
Thank you. It's a wonderful event.
For your very honest and heartfelt responses. I know I got a sense of what each of you believe in and what you might do. And we hope that those who have a chance to look at the recording also take away that sense of who you are. We'll now ask for closing statements from each candidate for 3 minutes each. And we started out with Mr. Wheel. So we're going to allow you, Mr. Salmont, to have the first at the closing statement.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. We have a very unique opportunity here with a special election. There was just an election in November, and quite frankly, we got pummeled roughly 70-30. We have a second chance at that with a special election. And special election, we know it's an odd time of year, and there's going to be a lower turnout than in a general election. There's a possibility, a very small possibility, that we could win this congressional seat. And the way to do that, we're not going to have a blue wave overtake us in 30 or in 60, 70 days from today. It's not going to happen. And we're not going to turn this place blue. And we're not going to have 100% Democratic turnout in an election. We need to convince moderate Republicans and NPAs, independents, to vote for a Democratic candidate in this election. And I think the way to do that is to support a candidate who lives locally, is to support a candidate who has run for Congress before, was actually a qualified candidate and made it through till November, has been vetted and poked and prodded by voters for an 11-month campaign. That would be me. And somebody who is not going to top down tell the people of this district what they need from Congress and what they need from their elected officials, but ask them what they want and listen to them and hear them and try and bring their concerns to Washington. I think we have a unique opportunity to be strategic for a change as Democrats, okay? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the very good. I'm not an enemy of progressives. I think AOC is a fantastic politician and one of the greats in this country. But she is right for her district, which is Queens, New York. And I am right for this district, which is a 30% Democrat, 70% ain't Democrat district. So think strategically and vote for the local moderate. And I think there's a possibility that we could win this election on April Fool's Day. And I'll turn it over to Josh, who is a very talented candidate in his own right.
Thank you, Mr. Whale. Your closing statement?
My name is Josh Wheel. I'm running for U.S. Congress in this special election in Florida's 6th district. And this is a very, very winnable race. There's a couple things that I just want to lay out here because I know context is king. You know, a lot of people are looking at this race in this district and they see R plus 32. The voter registration in this district is R plus 19. There is a huge gap between what is there and what we've been producing in results in local elections. And the reason is because messaging isn't free. You know, campaigns need money to run. And in the previous cycle, when, you know, Bishop Stockton, who's a great man and was a phenomenal candidate, was only able to raise $34,000 to Mike Walsh's $3 million. You can't get messaging out when you're outfunded at a rate of 100 to 1. The last time we had competitive messaging and competitive funding in this district was in 2018. And the results in that year were an R plus 12. So if this was a November election and we were going to get 95% turnout again, yeah, it would be really hard to overcome that R plus 19 voter registration advantage, even though only 46% of the registered voters in the district are Republican. There are more non-Republican voters in this district than there are Republicans. The fact that the Ron DeSantis and the Florida government wanted to fast track this. They wanted to get it through as quick as possible. They put it on April 1st. You know, they're trying to get as low turnout as possible. And if you're going to lower the number of votes that we have to get, I'm going to tell you, we will be able to get them. And never has it been more important for us to take a single congressional seat. Right now, it is 218 to 215 in the U.S. House. On January 21st, when Trump's 3 appointees take office, it'll be 215 to 215. We will have a deadlocked House when we go into this race on April 1st. If we win one of these 2 races in Florida, it stays tied. If we win both, we take back the House early. Was that 30 seconds or time?
30 seconds.
All right. There are 2 other races coming in Oregon and New York later this year, 2 red districts, but in states that have incredibly strong infrastructures in their Democratic Party, who can put all of their people and resources onto winning those races. These are winnable races, and in 2025, we are going to take back the House, which is what will allow us to stop Project 2025, to protect FEMA, to protect our public schools, to protect women's bodily autonomy, to support unions, to stop mass deportations, and AOC's from the Bronx.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank you again, all the candidates, for participating in this forum. We appreciate your time and effort in being a candidate. That's putting yourself out there, and that's not easy for people to do. So we want to applaud you for your efforts. This forum was recorded and can be viewed on the Florida League's website, lwvfl.org, the Villages/Tri-County website, lwvtrlfl.org, within the next 24 hours. It was broadcast on the League of Women Voters of Florida Facebook page and can be viewed there immediately. So share that with your supporters and others. We will also send it to the press and the media tomorrow so that they can let other community members know about the opportunity. To our audience, please tell your friends, family, and colleagues that they still have a chance to learn about the candidates by watching the recorded forum, those of you who were able to observe on the live stream. We remind everyone to check out our League's online voter guide at vote411.org. Thank you for being an informed voter. Remember to vote in the January 28th primary election and to check for the dates for early voting, the Supervisors of Elections websites. And I'll close by saying, recordings of this event, whether they be in person or on a computer screen, may not be used without the express written approval of the League. Just contact us and we can work it out. The League will also has a rule that we only allow the recordings of the forums to be shown in their full entirety, except for media outlets that could be reporting on the forum. They would be using a clip most likely. So with that, we'll say thank you again. Thank you to all the participants and the people that I mentioned earlier making this possible, and wish both of you and all the candidates the best of luck, because it is a difficult process being a candidate, getting out there, talking to people, sharing your views. And that's a process that the League supports. And that's one of the reasons why we host forums like this. Thank you again. And this will conclude our forum for this evening.
Thank you, Cecile.
Thanks, Cecile. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Josh.